good evening, everyone. I'm going to be responding to the claim that video games create a relatively bigger positive impact on today's society than do a negative one. I don't support this claim. I claim actually that video games have a larger negative effect on today's society. The supporting claims of the claim I'm responding to were firstly that video games can be a much greater benefit in a child's life, such as a tool for development of their linguistic and motor functions. Their secondary claim is even the violence and obscenities in video games are more beneficial than detrimental. Thirdly, they stated video games are an undervalued and underused medical tool that has higher tendency to assist the physical rehabilitation as opposed to deterring it. So on the first claim, claiming that it's better child's life for development of linguistic and motor skills, I claim actually that it hinders their development, and it can also cause children to develop attention deficit disorder, or ADHD. There's some supporting articles out there and studies. Out of the Journal of General Psychiatry, there's a study done about with young youth on how much video games they use, and their effectiveness in school. And so they concluded in the study that adolescents who play more than 1 hour of console or internet video games may have more or more intense symptoms of ADHD or inattention than those who do not. So that clearly supports that they could develop something that's bad for them. And there was a high correlation between the two, so it showed there was very strong evidence supporting that. Now the evidence that he used to support his claim was actually just from a Canadian newspaper about a school in Canada and how they received some funds to buy some systems, like Wii systems they bought. And the article kind of just went on to describe how they had a good time and they felt that they were learning, but there was no actual proof that they were developing linguistic skills or motor skills through using the system. So the second claim, the secondary claim, that is that the violence and obscenities in video games are more beneficial than detrimental. And his evidence that he used was basically he just kind of stated that the issues like the Columbine massacre and stuff like that were later, when they initially were thought because of video games, and they went back and they saw that they weren't caused by video games, which is true. But those are some crazy things that happen. But just common increases in violence in children. There's also been several studies done. There's actually from an article, or from a journal, the Journal of Adolescence. It took 3 separate studies, 2 in Japan and 1 in the United States. Each one had about 1,000 children, youth, studying about video games. And it stated that this study confirms that habitually playing violent video games leads to increases in physical aggression and some months later in children and adolescents, relative to those who do not play violent video games. So out of those 3 studies, it showed that there was really strong correlation between playing violent video games and violence in the home or at school. It might not be as crazy violence as coming to school and massacring, but violent tendencies. Also in the third claim, it stated that about that they're underused and undervalued medical tool. Now I do agree with this. They're undervalued for medical purposes. That's a pretty small portion. It could be brought up, but it's also bad medically. There's I claim that video games are bad in general for people's physical health. Video games have been shown to cause obesity, and they are because they're a sedentary activity. And there's also some evidence from another journal article from the Journal of Adolescence, also stating that there's several studies showing saying that results indicated that while television use was not related to children's weight to television use, video game use was. So there's strong evidence showing that video games use correlated to the weight and body mass index. And so to conclude, I conclude that video games are actually having a general negative effect on society.
All right, well, you've got a contrasting counterclaim immediately, and that's fine, so I'm expecting to see support for the counterclaim extensively in the speech, and you do that on all of the points. I think that that's pretty good. You do a nice summary of what the advocate's secondary claims were for the audience. That's fine. Clear transition on the first point. You're not really discussing the advocate's evidence to begin with. You basically start with the rebuttal claims about the impact that it's having on kids and their ability to focus, and you've got a good piece of data on ADHD that I like. You did finally get to a description challenging the evidence that the advocate used. They had a single example. There was no statistical backup on it. It was self-reported that they all enjoyed playing the video games, but it doesn't necessarily prove that point. So I think you might want to start with that and then go with the counterclaim so that you're responding to the evidence that the advocate presented first. I think it'll be a little bit clearer because it seems like it's an afterthought at this point. So organizationally, I think that would be more logical. Transition to the second point is very clear. You kind of accept the notion that there's no clear link to Columbine, but your position should be there doesn't have to be a clear link to these kinds of mass killings in order for it to have a negative effect on violence in society. And in fact, it really is much more likely to be an incremental problem. And then you do the same thing. Instead of talking about the advocate's evidence on this point, you've got a good counterclaim that you're presenting with your own evidence on those points, and I thought you did a nice job on that. You also gave it, in summarizing it, you kind of gave it the context that I was talking about. Maybe you want to have at the beginning. So again, it's just a little bit of organizational thing. It seems like the supporting points that you have on each of the individual points need to be inverted. I think it would be a little bit clearer there. And then I thought on the last point, the one thing that was missing here, you kind of suggest, and it's not that it's missing that much, because as I recall the advocate point, they had a single example of surgeons using video games to have some potential benefit. You basically say, look, this is a really small benefit. I'm not exactly sure how you would quantify any of that. I think you could be a little bit more aggressive in challenging that point, but the argument about a negative health effect that comes along, I think, is a vastly more important issue when it comes to health consequences, and explain that that's why that's on this particular point, because it's really about general health. All right, thank you.